Lemonade Originals.
Welcoming my guest today, Lisa Bowman, former CMO of the United Way, but also coming to us with a very unique background that includes everything from nonprofit to Fortune 500 organizations. And it's just a really kind of great perspective that I think you bring to marketing and purpose. And I've enjoyed the conversations we've had so far, and I'm excited to continue that here today. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Trevor. Looking forward to hanging out for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my first question is, how are you doing? How's quarantine going? What's your addiction right now? What's your distraction?
Well, if it's helpful, I have not yet yielded to making a TikTok video, and I'm sure I've got a 15-year-old in the background that's very happy for that. Quarantine is quarantine. I think we're all in this. It's challenging, but there's also opportunities that come out of it. There are definitely certain things that I'm missing. I was just talking with somebody earlier about the fact that I have not had a meal out in a restaurant since March 13th, going on, 2 months-ish since eating out, but getting to work out every day on Zoom. And that's a great thing because I certainly was not making it to the gym every day before. So there's trade-offs, right? I'm not getting to eat in a restaurant, but I am getting to work out. It's all good.
That's kind of a lot of what it is right now. In the whole scheme of things, like it's not that big of a deal. Like there's
Yeah.
so many things to be thankful for right now. These are fun challenges to deal with. So
There. It could be so much worse, and I think that that is something that we all need to keep in perspective. I'm sure there are other people like me and you that are frustrated at how long this has gone on. But the reality is, it's a super serious situation, and I'm very thankful, quite frankly, that I've got a roof over my head, food on my table. And out of opportunity, or I'm sorry, out of chaos sometimes comes opportunity. And I think that this is one of those scenarios. I think we are definitely going to see so much shift in whatever the new normal is compared to the old normal. But I don't think that's all bad necessarily. I just think it's going to take some getting used to.
I 100% agree, and I feel like that's such a thing to latch onto right now as a positive is to focus on, what are the things that, even if they've been, forced changes, what are the positives that are happening, and you and I got into that a little bit, which was like, brands are kind of doing years of work in months right now, and some of them better than others, but it's forcing innovation to happen at a speed that is so much faster than maybe it was in certain places than before. I'm kind of curious if you've been tracking that and seen examples where you think it's working really well, or you think certain people have really owned that challenge.
Yeah, there's a number of examples. I mean, if you think about it, the past a couple years, right? The buzzword everybody has said, oh, we're in the middle of a digital transformation. And it kind of reminds me of the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm dating myself here, but as we went through sort of the initial dot com, it's kind of that same thing, right? People were going online with e-commerce and omni-channel came into play. We've all been talking about digital technology and how that's going to enable and change businesses. And not just how people market, but it changes the fundamentals of business operations. I think overnight we've been thrust into digital transformation. So there are models that have been out there that were sort of limping along, not really widely adopted, like online grocery delivery or curbside delivery. That's become the new norm. It sort of happened overnight. And even for people that weren't digitally savvy, they've learned how to do it in many cases. And I think now that they've overcome that barrier, kind of like me with cooking, right? Oh, this isn't so bad. It's pretty easy. I can order my groceries and go pick them up and somebody will throw them in my trunk, or I don't even have to drive. Somebody will bring them to me. So I think that's one example of a model. I think from a brand perspective, I think the way brands are behaving right now is going to be so instrumental in how those brands are perceived as we come on the other side of this. Whether the brands are leaning in, doing the right thing, insurance companies, for example, stepping forward proactively to say, hey, listen, we recognize that those that we insure are not driving right now, or they're driving substantially less. Therefore, the risk of accidents has gone down exponentially, and our cost to serve will go down. So we should do something about that. To me, that's a great example of leading with purpose over profit. They're still making money, no question, but they leaned into it. And I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. You've got a whole generation that is stuck at home, Gen Z, right? They're stuck at home. They're missing out on so many of those magical life moments that they were expecting, but they're watching brands, they're watching how their parents are treated by their employers, and that is going to shape their perceptions of brands, and they are poised to come big and heavy into the consumer spending market. So I know that was a whole bunch. There's a whole lot going on here.
Yeah. No, I want to pick that apart a little bit. There's a lot. There's a lot there. The last part of it that you said is really interesting, which I haven't really dove into very much, which is the idea of younger Gen Z and the earlier part of even millennial, watching like parents in stable jobs being laid off right now, and I was talking about this recently, just the idea of job security and that kind of being thrust away right now. You know, what do you think that's going to do to them when they go to enter the workforce now? Do you think it's going to create more sort of entrepreneurship? Do you think it's going to change the way that they want to interact with brands based on how they've supported their families during this time?
Yeah, I think definitely yes to both. So I was at a conference last fall, and it was a youth marketing conference targeting Gen Z. One of the things that really caught me and that I thought was funny and in some ways sort of sadly funny was the fact that in the top three job aspirations for Gen Z was the job of influencer. I didn't actually realize that that was a job, but to them it is because they've got the ability to be entrepreneurial, to represent brands whose values and purpose align with their own, and have the ability to really do what they want to do without being forced into a corporate structure. So I think you're going to see a little bit, depending on how they perceive a brand, you may see a little bit of reticence from them to go into that more corporate or office type environment. They're growing up where they're hearing it's not safe to be with other people. They are getting more exposure to brands than they probably normally would because of the increased screen time that everybody is dealing with right now. And then layer on the personal impact of seeing what's happening with your parents, to your point. Did your parent get furloughed or laid off? Did their company do the right thing for them? That's going to have impact on them. They're in their formative years, right? I mean, at the oldest, they're in their 20s and early 20s. So, I'm not too old to remember when I was that age, and how my perceptions were being shaped of things and what was happening around me. And that was before we had all of this digital technology and access to all of the information that we've got today. So I do think it's going to shape them. And I think that, if they hear a parent say something like, oh, I won't name a specific insurance company, but I've got insurance company X and we're going to get a rebate from them this month. Or the fact that, you know what, and I will call this company out because I think they did a brilliant job with some of their marketing. Uber put up TV spots and basically said, please do not use us right now. Um, as opposed to the normal, right? Hey, no reason for you to drive. You should take an Uber. Right now, they're messaging, please don't take an Uber. We want you to stay home. Again, purpose over profit for the greater good. Let's protect our drivers. Let's protect our community. And I think those things are going to stick with people and resonate as we come out on the other side of this.
Is that because this is where you've had a lot of focus with purpose over profit and really just purpose driving a lot of the strategy and kind of decisions that you've made as a leader, from my understanding. Can you describe that a little bit more in terms of what it means to you?
In terms of purpose, profit, and how they align.
Yeah, because I think last time we got into, there's corporate responsibility and there's purpose, and oftentimes they're confused as being very similar. Right now, brands are trying to figure out, how do I market? How do I sort of say, yes, this is happening, we know what's going on, but we also have to be a brand that is for profit and, is trying to get our message out. And oftentimes, a brand right now might have something really unique and beneficial to the consumer. Hopefully they do. That's what they should be doing, is adapting, right? And to do that in a way that's authentic. I guess, how does that tie into to purpose?
So it's a great question, and I'm going to unpack that one just a little bit
Yeah,
because
please.
you mentioned corporate social responsibility, and the way that I look at it is it's sort of been an evolution. It started with sustainability, which was mostly tied to the environment. Then we sort of progressed and evolved, and we started talking about corporate social responsibility. And that took multiple facets. It was the environment, it was diversity and inclusion, it was broader than just the environment. Corporate social responsibility still encompasses a number of things, but now we're evolving again. And I think that next evolution really is purpose and recognizing that purpose impacts your supply chain, it impacts your customers, it impacts your employees. And it's not just what you do environmentally or how you market, it's actually something that is embedded into your DNA. It comes through in your operations, it comes through in your marketing. It comes through in your HR practices. It touches every facet of your business because it really is the reason that you exist. And so, thinking back just about a year ago, the Business Roundtable secured 151 CEO signatures. These are big global CEOs that signed on to this, stating that the purpose of a company exceeds just being able to make a profit. And they were dead on, right? I think in the past it's been you're either a profit driven company or you're a purpose driven company, and the two didn't mesh. And I very much believe, coming from the space that I've worked in for the past 10 years, both in the UPS Foundation, so Fortune 50 with really strong foundation presence, and then for the world's largest nonprofit, that those two things are not mutually exclusive. Purpose and profit not only play well in the sandbox together, sometimes they even share the same toys. And they have to coexist coming out of this. Um, and to that end, I think the companies that are marketing on purpose today, rather than product, which drives profit, are the ones that are going to win. I'll give you an example of that. If you believe that you want to work out right now, right? It's you're social distanced and maybe you want to start bike riding. That sort of becomes your purpose from a workout perspective. Take a sporting goods company. Instead of marketing to you about biking shoes and biking shorts and accessories, maybe they're helping you fulfill that purpose. They're feeding you content on here's how to find biking trails, here's how to do a bike training program. Here's a community that we've put up of other new bikers. So you can have your own biking club if you'd like online. They're facilitating all of that. Behind that is obviously a soft sell and the infusion of brand preference so that when you do need to purchase something, you decide, oh, you know what? Can't do this because I don't have a helmet. I need a helmet. That's where you're going to go to buy the helmet. They're helping you find your sense of purpose, and that is fulfilling their purpose. But then you soft sell a product, and the profit comes along with that. If you're out there today just trying to hack products, it's not going to resonate with people.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I think so much of what we do now is, and sometimes certain brands get this more than others, but there's sort of the, okay, here's who we want to reach and here's what we want to sell, and that's great. You need to know that, but it's especially for a Gen Z market or early millennial market, it's more about enabling experiences, which is really what I feel like you're describing. And how does the brand fit into that? How are they a part of that landscape and that environment? It doesn't have to be because they're selling you the thing to do the thing. That's obvious, like if you don't get that, then you've done a bad job of all the building blocks, right? The thing that you should be thinking about is how you're a part of the thread work, the landscape, right? Because then of course, when it comes time to make that purchase decision, whether it's now or a year later, I'm going to choose the person who's been there, the brand that's been there, feeding me content, tips, strategies, whatever it may be. So I 100% agree. I think you've encapsulated the strategy that anybody should be taking perfectly. I really do.
Thanks. I think, and content is a big thing too right now because, again, we're all bored in the house. And so those brands that are leaning in and doing creative things to entertain us and engage in the life that we're living and helping us fulfill that are the brands that are going to resonate. Another really good example that I heard about in something I read or tripped over this week is Kellogg's with some of their products and their content marketing strategy to help with education and parents with homeschooling kids. Cheez-Its have now become counting squares, right? How many Cheez-Its in the pile? Count them, move them from this pile to that pile.
That's
Fruit Loops,
great.
great way to help kids learn their colors. Fruit Loops. I love Fruit Loops. Never really thought about it. Yeah, they all blend together. They turn the milk a really pretty sort of pinkish green, and that's cool. But some really, really creative ways. Then Heinz Ketchup did something that I thought was amazing. They ran a limited edition, 57 of them, puzzles that are Heinz Ketchup puzzles. The entire puzzle is red. It's not a Heinz Ketchup bottle, it's Heinz Ketchup. So every piece of the puzzle is the exact same color,
Oh,
red.
sounds so difficult.
I know. Yeah, it sounds like the thing that would give me quite frankly, a hell of a headache. But I'm dying to get my hands on one of those puzzles. And again, they only produced 57 of them, and I don't think any of them were distributed in the U.S.
That's super smart though, because that's another smart marketing tactic of just exclusivity and the kind of unique factor. And I was talking to someone about this recently because we're designing some packs for gamers for a game that we're launching, and the idea was like it's not about volume, it's about how cool this thing is that we're going to send out. It isn't just this thing, this box that this shoe comes in or this tool comes in, whatever it is. It's whatever they receive. Even the packaging should be something that they want to keep around their house, that they want to use for something else, because then they remember the brand. There's good recall, and the idea that they weren't on the list or they didn't get it, makes them talk about it. Makes them want to seek it out, and that's really just fun, organic conversation, and it doesn't feel like marketing.
I am a huge packaging junkie, so that completely resonates with me. When I get something that's in a cool box or comes just wrapped in some way that's different, I will spend more time examining that and getting excited over that sometimes than the actual product itself. It's like I unpack it and I'm like, ooh, this is really cool. Look at this packaging. Oh, look at, the fill in the packaging or whatever they've done with it. So that to me is about experiential marketing. And, I think that is going to be really important too, as we as consumers are pulling more and more product to home, you're going to lose product experience with that in-store experience. This may not resonate with you, it will with any female that's listening to this, but as we go into a cosmetics store, the ability to sample and play with product is going to be gone.
That's huge. Yeah.
And not to call anybody out in one way or the other, but I'm one of those people that like you want to go occupy me for 2 hours, throw me in Sephora, and
Yep.
I'm good. I will come out of there covered from head to toe in makeup, and I will have played, and I will walk out with a whole bag full of stuff that A, I didn't know I needed till I walked in, and B, I probably still didn't need, but I wanted. That's going to go away. So we're going to have to look for different ways to engage the consumers and give them a brand experience in their home. And I think that's going to be really critical.
Yeah, and I think that's another part where the creativity is going to come out of the woodwork, and the people who really have it are gonna win, right? And the people who don't are gonna just kind of be called out, right? It's sort of one of those equalizers, but also just it's just forcing the best of the best, and I think that's what's really fun too, is you're seeing really unique creative stuff, and also really supportive, added value. I feel like for us, I mean, we're just an agency supporting brands, and we're saying how can we add value everywhere. But if you're a product or anything dealing more directly with the consumer, how can you, if you're like insurance, how can you give them a discount? That's straightforward, but immediate benefit. If you're a product and it's maybe less about a discount, more about how do we adapt or create a new line of something that is maybe more meaningful to their life right now. Those are the things that are going to make a difference, because you're not buying the same types of things, right? You're not seeing as much luxury goods being sold. So if I was, Gucci or one of those brands, I'd be thinking about how I could be adapting something right now.
Although it is really interesting because looking at what's happening in China, there's been a huge resurgence in luxury spending. Now, I get it. The Chinese economy and our economy are a little bit different, and there's a cultural difference too. But the Hermes store in Beijing, I believe, the first day that they were open, did their highest record sales ever.
Wow.
They did just under $3 million in sales in a single shortened hours day, the first day that they were open. So there's been a lot of discussion about in certain economies pent up demand for luxury goods. I actually don't think we're going to see that here.
I agree.
Not that I would profess to be an expert, but do you remember Magic 8 Balls from when
Yep.
we were a kid? Okay, so somewhere in the house I have one, can't find it. I have this whole bowl of balls sitting on our dining room table here. So this is my Magic 8 Ball. If I shake it up and look at it, right, it's telling me the future is uncertain. But what I do think that we're going to see is increased demand for the secondary market for luxury goods. I think you're going to have a scenario where people are in possession of luxury goods. If they can't get back to work, they're going to try and extract value. Maybe it's selling a used Louis bag or something like that. The people that do still have money are going to look to pick up some of that at a reduced price. They're still going to want that luxury, that status item. But if you've got a chance to get that gently used, maybe, I think that that market, whether it's the luxury retail resellers like a Real or a Poshmark, I think there's going to be a bigger uptick in that because I think that you're still going to struggle. Number one, we're all going to struggle economically for some period of time. Even when the economy is, air quotes, back up and running, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to go into a restaurant that's operating at capacity anymore. To be profitable, a restaurant needs to run at about 90% capacity. Airlines need to run at a certain capacity. You block the middle seat, you're reducing the passenger load by 30%. It changes the profitability model. So we've got all of this stuff that's coming at us at the same time. I just don't see, to your point, I don't see a real return to some certain segments fast and hard, but I think for the people that still have that demand, they'll look for it a different way.
I agree, and I think this is interesting because like we've worked with the Real early on in some of their authentication content, and the really interesting thing about that was they were really forward thinking in, at least in their early content, about just how meticulous their services are and their staff is in the authentication process when they're accepting products. And I'm sure other companies that do that as well. But then putting that content out, educating someone who's going to buy a secondhand piece, and to look at the stitching, to look internally. My wife's really good at that because she's bought things like that in the past, and she's studied it enough to know what to look for. But a lot of people just haven't paid attention to it, right? And so I think a big piece that is missing for a lot of brands is and is missing in terms of it being something that you can own in so many segments that's not quite being owned yet is the education factor. And this could be a good opportunity for that right now to double down on in a brand's content, is to educate the consumer more on something like that, like authentication, or to educate them on, how to get a deal or how to shop better for something, whether that's food or that's a product or that's something else. Because there's a lot of us who, when everything's good, we're not looking at prices at the store when we're grabbing something off the shelf, or we're not, you know, looking at the bill for our expenses on a vacation, but now we're going to be a lot more cognizant about those things. And some people are really good at it, and some people need some tips. And so if you can own the space from that, you're kind of tying into what you mentioned about the bike company enabling the experience in a different way.
Yeah, and again, not to do a paid political announcement for the Real Real, but I love their model.
I do too.
I've been a customer on both ends, right? I've bought and I've sold on there. I think you're right. I think the education piece is going to be really critical. I think, though, that one thing that they may need to address is how you handle safety. You are buying something that has come from someone that you don't know. And we're in this whole new thing where safety and security are going to be paramount. So, how do you reassure a consumer that when they open the package and whatever they've bought, whether it's a clothing item or a handbag, how do they know that it's safe and it's secure? That somebody hasn't touched it. And so the Real Real has got their safety procedures in place, but I think what they're going to have to do is figure out how you give somebody that comfort level about touching an item that's coming from somebody else, and how do you position that? Same thing for some of the other like the tradesies and the Poshmarks. Now you're getting a product directly from somebody else that hasn't gone through a central party. And I know that the Real doesn't do certain services. They don't clean, they don't sterilize the products. That may be something that they need to think about. Second point is you mentioned the concept of ownership somewhere in what you had said previously. And that got me thinking too, as we talk about values, we talk about the economic situation and what's happening. I think that rent to own versus purchase to own is going to become a very big deal as well. Um, and interestingly enough, I saw that Bloomingdale's has just started a rent to own with clothing. Some of
Wow.
the brands have done that, right? You've got companies like the Rent the Runways that are out there that were first movers with that. Diane von Furstenberg is a brand does that. It's called DVF Link. And I saw last week that Bloomingdale's is actually starting that same type of program, which I think is brilliant because if you can't move the inventory, if you can't sell it, people are afraid to come into the store. Um, People are afraid to come into the store. They're afraid to purchase the inventory. um, can you rent it? Can you send it out so that they're still using it? They send it back, you clean it, and it goes to somebody else. It's a way of continuing to move through that inventory without perhaps having to mark it down for clearance as consumer sales decline.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think that's super smart. I had no idea they were doing it, and especially we're seeing things like Neiman Marcus, with their shutdown, and maybe if they thought about something like that or gotten move on it fast enough, maybe something like that could have helped. And like for example, we have a client in the beauty space, that's as a major booking tool for beauty services, and obviously it's hard unless you're in certain states right now that are opening back up to get your hair cut. There's going to be a ton of pent up demand for that, as we talk about pent up demand. But right
I have
now,
it.
yeah, I know. I was like, what do I do with this? But as of right now, it's like, how do they support their stylists, and then also how do customers who want to not be left out in the cold when there's just a rush on this, when things do come back, we've sort of worked with them to say, okay, let's figure out virtual appointments. Let's figure out prepays. If people say, when I know this is something I'm going to do, I'll book it ahead of time. And that way the stylist is getting some money now and they know they've got an appointment reserved when things do come back. And things like that are just, kind of keeping the lights on, and it's super smart. And I think that you have to be able to adapt and do the hard work on the back end right now to explore those things, and then you're going to find out some of it may be here to stay and may have been things that you wish you'd done sooner, right?
Definitely, and just personal experience. So I have a monthly membership at one of the blow dry bars that's been closed. I got an email from them today, and instead of looking to see anything else, the first thing I went to was to read their safety procedures. Because the question I asked myself, and I said, gosh, it's been forever. I would love to go get my hair done. Do I feel safe doing that? Let me see what they're doing. and make my assessment. Is it enough for me? Does it give me that comfort level with what they're doing? And candidly, I'm not sure that it did. Um, I went through it and I thought, I just don't know that I want to
Yeah.
take that risk right now.
Something I was going to ask you too, which is just perspective on, like, there's the idea of how do we be responsible, and crafty, marketers right now and all of those things, but how do we make people feel safe? I mean, it's going to vary industry to industry, but how important is it to do that? And then how do you actually do it?
I think it is going to be the single most important thing that companies and brands can do, not just for their customers, but also for their employees, as we facilitate return to the workplace for some people. What's that new contract between the employer and the employee so that the employee feels safe going into work? How do you know that going back into your office isn't going to put your family at risk? And what is the changing set of expectations that now exists between an employer and employee? Um, if you don't have a work from home policy, obviously everybody's working from home, but if you're one of those companies that, as a normal course of business, didn't have that, except for special circumstances, do you now allow an employee to say, you know what, I don't want to come back. I want to work from home. I'm not comfortable. And is that okay? What is the investment on the part of the employer to facilitate safety and cleanliness in the workplace at a different level than they had to before?
Yeah. What would you think are some of the sort of processes and kind of approaches that people should be taking to figure out, just how to kind of navigate this, from all perspectives. There's no, everybody's looking for the answer, right? And I feel like you can only make decisions based on the information you have in front of you, and that's changing every day. But at least if you can approach it with a process and say, okay, there's these 3 or 5 things that I need to figure out. It may change tomorrow, but at least figure out what our approach is to them and just be willing to let them adapt. What do we think those are? I mean, we're highlighting some right now, right? But I'm just curious if you feel like there's a process there.
I do. I think one of the most important things that people can do is to listen. Listen to your employees, listen to your customers, get their feedback. What is it going to take for them to be comfortable? What it takes for you to be comfortable doing something, going to get a haircut versus what it takes for me to go get a haircut are going to be two very different things, right? You're going to go in, you're going to get a haircut. It's going to take a lot less time for you to get a haircut, and you're probably not getting a blow dry. I don't know, maybe you are, but for
Right.
me, right, I'm going to be in there for at least an hour with somebody very close to my face. Granted, we will probably both be wearing masks. Are you going to blow dry my hair? What happens? What if you cough? Does the blow dryer distribute germs through the air? If I'm going into a place of business and I have to take an elevator to get to the floor that I work on, how comfortable am I getting into that elevator with 5 or 6 other employees where we're all in a little tiny box? And if I'm in a big urban area, if I'm in New York, where I'm in a 60-story building with a whole bank of elevators, and there's routinely 10 to 12 to 14 people in there, if you can't do that anymore and you can only have 2 people in an elevator, I'm, I'm going to add that extra time onto what it takes me to actually get to my office. I may have to stand there and wait for 5 cycles of elevators to go through. So I think really listening and understanding what people's expectations are and what they feel safety and security are is critical at any business today, whether you're trying to welcome back your employees, welcome back customers. What is the experience that they're looking for that's going to fulfill their desire for safety and security?
I think that's really actionable because one thing that everybody has right now as a brand or personal brand or whatever is social media, and I think that's one of the best R&D tools that we have. I think there's always ways to do surveying of your customer base or of something you might be considering doing if you're thinking of starting a business, and you want to make it timely and relevant right now. And social is like one of those great R&D tools that I think gets undervalued. And so that could be a great action to take on this particular advice, is to say, hey, we are reopening in a week. Will it take for you to feel safe? And I'm sending that to all of our customers. Get that feedback, and take action on it. And maybe it's not what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear.
Exactly. And I think there's also an opportunity whereas brands were competitors before, and they still will be. I think there's also an opportunity in some sectors for brand collaboration to look at what is the set of industry standards for our industry that we've jointly developed so that people feel safe engaging in our product, whether it's sports and entertainment, whether it's a retail environment, whether it is the National Restaurant Association, whatever it is. How do you create a common set of standards for an industry and then ask people to adhere to those standards so that you lift everybody up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that, as you're moving fast and furious, you often just don't have those established. But there's no time like the present to
Totally.
establish these things.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a great opportunity for people to think a little bit differently. We're going to have to think differently. That's not going to be an option.
Yeah. What do you think about someone who is either because they want to or because they're forced to it right now, considering a new career path? That's something I'm thinking about a lot as well. And there's think people like myself and you I would include in this bucket who are entrepreneurial and fearless, and then there's people who are a little bit less built that way, perhaps, and are not sure what to do. And I just thinking about tips and advice for someone who's just trying to figure out kind of where to plant their feet.
So I think that if you are unemployed right now and you're thinking about starting your own business, you actually kind of have a gift because you've got time and you've got if you're working and trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur, you're doing it in your spare time. You can't give it full attention. Right now, when so many people aren't working and so many jobs presumably are not going to come back, I do think there's going to be an opportunity for entrepreneurial models. I think that companies may lean more towards contractors and people that are comfortable working remote, working from home, than people in an office space. So I think my guidance would be use this time to learn, use this time to plan, watch what's happening, look for those little cracks that provide opportunity. Again, it's that old adage, out of chaos comes opportunity, and it's there. We just have to find it.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that, if you've thought about something that you're passionate about, there's no time like the present right now to pursue that. Even if it doesn't work, you've got that experimentation cycle right now that you may not have had.
Definitely. I would say be agile. It's okay to fail. A failure is a learning. The only real mistake that happens, as I used to tell my team, is if somebody dies, right? That's the one thing you can't fix. Everything else is a learning opportunity. So take it, learn if you're going to do it. And if you're going to fail, fail small, fail safe, fail fast, learn, and move on.
I guess speaking of that, what do you feel like the outlook is, for you, for your community, kind of the immediate, sort of um, perspective that we each have as individuals, right this moment. Just like, where do you feel like you are in the world? Just like kind of more of a personal question. Because I guess a lot of people are also doing self reflection, and I just wonder, what. How do you feel like the next day holds?
That changes from day to day. It kind of depends on how the day before has been and what happens. I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. I need that social interaction. If I've spent my day on Zoom or on the phone with people, generally I'm good. I'm getting what I need. If it's a day where it's been really quiet and it's just kind of me, those are the days that tend to bring me down a little bit. So I'm really motivated and incented to find those interactions during the day using this opportunity to network. There's a lot of people with time on their hands. People are empathetic right now. They're willing to lean in. There's a ton of stuff to be doing. I mean, I'm working out every day. It's great. Zoom has really been awesome for helping me accomplish that. And so I think it's really important to stay in a routine. It may be a different routine or a new routine, but stay in a routine. and find your way through it. Find those little moments that are giving you pleasure throughout the day, or figure out those things that you need, like that human interaction, that will give you the little boost of energy that you need to pick up and hit the next task.
think that's great. Yeah, and I think that there's one other thing I wanted to ask you that I think certain people are asking themselves too right now that you'd have some interesting perspective on, just with your experience and the nonprofit space, which is like maybe people want to help right now, but they don't know how they can help, and they may not be able to help, or they may think they may not be able to help, but maybe it's just sort of helping in your community. Maybe it's just helping yourself right now. What's your perspective on that?
So I think this is a great time for help. There are a lot of people that need help, and there are people that want to give help. And help doesn't necessarily mean money. There are other ways that you can help. So there is virtual volunteerism. You've got some people that are trying to work from home and trying to manage homeschooling their kids. Maybe if you're not employed, you could offer in your neighborhood to be a virtual tutor for kids or be the on-call person during the day, that could help out if somebody's child needs help with school. Um, I think there's opportunities there. I would say if you want to give, there's so many people right now without jobs that probably the best opportunity, if you want to do something financially, is to contribute to a food bank. People need food. You need to eat to stay healthy. There are people without food on their tables all over the place, and people that are on the brink of being food insecure. So I think there are tons of opportunities to lean in. You know what? It could just be reaching out to somebody in your neighborhood that is self isolating and asking them if they want to get on the phone at some point during the day just to have somebody to talk to. That's helping somebody. It doesn't have to be a
Yeah,
big deal.
I think that's huge. I think there's a lot of that happening. So it's hard. It's hard to know, like, if you're not doing your part right now, and to get critical of yourself right now too. I think because we can feel like we are, you know, maybe even taking for granted that we're not in as worse of a situation as someone else. But I think it's great to have those ideas out there for someone who wants to help but just doesn't know how. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there's always something that you can do. And again, it may be a 5 minute activity. Just pick up the phone, call somebody, asking somebody how they are, right? It's kind of all relative today, but asking, and in the normal course of business, you walk past somebody, you say, "Hey, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine," and you go on about your business. Instead of doing that quick exchange, try leaning into it. How are you? No, I mean really, how are you? Spend 5 minutes. Let them talk to you. Give them a set of ears. I think some days we're all looking for that outlet.
Well, that's all I had for you. Don't know if you have any questions for me. I've asked you a lot of questions.
No, I'm glad we had a chance to chat this afternoon. I love the fact that your shirt is on brand. So as I'm looking at you, you so nicely match my corporate identity. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
It was planned. It was all planned.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, thank you for your time today. Hope that you have a good rest of your weekend, week, whatever it blends into. I don't know anymore. But we'll talk again soon and
That's great.
we'll
Every
go
day
from there.
becomes every day becomes Blur's Day, I guess.
Blur's Day. I haven't heard
Blur's
that one
Day.
yet.
Yep. Trevor, it was great to talk to you this afternoon. Stay well and look forward to connecting again soon.
Likewise.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Lemonade Original.